Before Vietnam turned boys into soldiers, it taught them one thing: that something else was already hunting them, and that truth didn't come from rumors or campfire stories. It came from hard numbers. Vietnam held the highest density of unexplored jungle on the planet. Over 60% of it locked under triple canopy darkness. A place where daylight barely reached the ground. A place where entire companies disappeared in the foliage without leaving a footprint behind. So when the radio call came through, the men listening didn't laugh, didn't shrug, didn't assume someone was imagining shadows. Be advised, movement at 200, not VC, not animal, multiple, standing, watching. Those words hit harder than incoming mortar fire, because anyone who served out there knew one thing. The jungle didn't stand. The jungle didn't watch. The jungle swallowed. It didn't observe. And yet, patrol after patrol reported the same thing. Unidentified movement at fixed elevation, bipedal silhouettes pacing the perimeter, no heat signatures that matched known wildlife, no sound patterns that lined up with Viet Cong infiltration tactics. It wasn't one unit, it wasn't one province. These reports came from Quang Nam, from Con Tum, from the ridgelines around Hill 621, and from American and Vietnamese forces on opposite sides of the war, both logging the same phrase in their after-action notes. Subject observed, did not retreat. If you've ever read a military field report, you know how strange that is. Tigers retreat, civilians flee, even hardened VC scouts withdraw when spotted. But whatever this was, it didn't move. It didn't hide. It simply watched, as if measuring the men watching it back. That's why the veterans who survived those jungles don't argue about whether something was out there. They argue about what it wanted. So, before we move forward, remember this. This isn't a story built from legends. It isn't camp gossip. It isn't drunken memories from VFW halls. This is the story Vietnam veterans only whispered about. The encounters both sides documented, but neither side ever explained. And once you hear it, you'll understand why they never forgot. Before we go any deeper, a quick request. YouTube's algorithm doesn't exactly treat new creators kindly, so your support is everything. If you want stories like this to reach a wider audience, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment. It genuinely helps more than you think. All right, back to the story. Vietnam wasn't just a war zone. It was a world the maps never truly captured. A place where the US military learned fast that the enemy wasn't only the Viet Cong. The environment itself was a threat with rank, structure, and rules of its own. Out there, venomous snake bites hit between 25 and 50 American soldiers every year. Malaria wasn't a possibility. It was listed as inescapable. And 2/3 of South Vietnam was mountainous terrain that punished anyone who tried to cross it. Even before a shot was fired, the terrain was already winning. Now add the jungle, not just trees, but what the military classified as closed terrain. Triple canopy cover stacked so thick that sunlight barely reached the ground. The upper canopy blocked aircraft. The middle canopy crippled visibility. And the lower canopy hid movement so completely that patrols could pass within yards of each other and never know it. In those conditions, sound behaved differently. Light behaved differently. Even time felt different. Soldiers joked that the jungle breathed, But most didn't laugh when they said it, because deep inside those forests were pockets of land untouched for thousands of years. Ecosystems that had never seen a human footprint. Places modern science never surveyed, never mapped, never even named. And the people who lived there long before the war, the Montagnards, had a word for what shared that forest with them. Batutung, the forest people. They spoke about them the way some talk about weather or old mountains. Not myths, not stories. Just part of the landscape. Something you respected if you wanted to come home alive. So before we move forward, remember this. Long before rifles echoed through the highlands, something else walked here. The deeper American forces pushed into the Central Highlands. The stranger the reports became. Not enemy tactics, not ambush patterns, but something that didn't fit any field manual. Something the troops started calling the Rock Apes. These weren't small monkeys stealing rations from camps. Soldiers described creatures standing 5 to 6 feet tall, covered in reddish-brown hair from shoulders to ankles, moving upright with a gait far too human to dismiss during a night patrol. They appeared in groups, 8, sometimes 15, and they didn't scatter like wildlife. They watched, they tested, they reacted, and they threw rocks, not pebbles, not branches. Actual stones, some the size of helmets, some heavier than a loaded rucksack. Marines at Dongden Mountain recorded volleys launched from elevated terrain, coordinated enough to pin down entire squads. At Hill 621, radio logs mention impacts hitting with enough force to dent ammunition crates. In Kon Tum Province, one patrol reported being surrounded on 3 sides, the creatures hurling rocks with accuracy no known primate could replicate. These weren't isolated rumors traded between fire bases. These were logged encounters, after-action notes, cross-referenced sightings by American platoons, ARVN units, and Montagnard scouts who had lived in those mountains long before the war. The locals barely reacted when soldiers described the creatures. Batutung, they said. Forest people. Even the North Vietnamese army took the phenomenon seriously. In 1974, after most U.S. combat forces had left, the NVA organized an official expedition, soldiers, scientists, and local trackers. Their mission was simple on paper: capture or kill one. They returned empty-handed, but they brought plaster casts of human-like footprints, reports of disturbed vegetation, and field notes that raised even more questions. What made these encounters so difficult to ignore was their consistency. Height estimates within the same range, same hair color, same upright posture, same territorial behavior, same repeated tactic: use high ground, bombard with stones, withdraw when outgunned. And yet, as bizarre as the Rock Apes were, they weren't the thing that kept veterans awake decades later. Because the soldiers began reporting something else out there. Something taller, something smarter, something silent. Moving along the perimeter like it understood every weakness the jungle exposed. Specialist John Carter didn't believe a word of the Rock Ape stories. Not one. He served with the 1001st Airborne, a unit known for being the first in and the last out. And Carter was their M60 gunner, the man everyone counted on when things went sideways. He was steady, quiet, and shaped by the kind of realism only combat could carve into a person. To him, the jungle had snakes, tigers, Viet Cong, and nothing else. Whenever someone mentioned strange shapes in the brush or footsteps that didn't match enemy movement, Carter just shrugged and repeated the same line. If it bleeds, a 7.62 will kill it. That was his rule. Simple, proven, untouchable. Until the night it fell apart. Late in the monsoon cycle, he took his turn on perimeter watch. The rain didn't fall, it hammered. Sheets of water slammed into his helmet, ran down the receiver of his M60, and turned the ground into sucking mud. Visibility crashed to near zero. Lightning flashed just long enough to show a wall of trees and then swallowed everything again. His fighting position was a shallow hole reinforced with sandbags. No cover behind him. No movement from friendly lines. Just isolation, the kind that made every sound echo. Carter scanned his sectors like always. Slow, controlled, professional. And then something shifted. Not a dart, not a scramble, a step. It moved out of the rain like it had been standing there, waiting. And in that instant, Carter understood something he had never allowed himself to consider. Some things don't care about 7.62. Some things don't care who's holding the gun. Because that night, something walked out of the rain that no bullet could explain. The rain didn't fall that night. It hammered the earth like artillery. Each impact shook Carter's fighting hole, turning the ground into a slow, sucking mess around his boots. He wiped the water from his eyes, tightened his grip on the M60, and kept scanning his sectors. Same rhythm, same routine, until something changed. The jungle went quiet, not reduced, not softened, but cut off, clean and instant, like someone had thrown a switch. The rain still struck his helmet, still tapped against the receiver of the gun. But everything else, every insect, every distant croak, every whisper of movement, disappeared at the exact same moment. Carter lifted his head slightly. His breathing slowed. His thumb rested on the safety, ready but not panicked. Lightning cracked across the canopy. For a fraction of a second, the tree line lit up. And Carter wasn't alone. A silhouette stood between the sheets of rain. Tall, too tall to be a man. The outline held still, arms lowered, body angled like it was assessing him. The next flash showed it again, but from a different position, just a few feet to the left, as if it moved while the darkness covered the ground. Carter leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Shapes played tricks in storms, but this one didn't sway like a branch or jump like wildlife. It stood with purpose and something like discipline. Another flash. This time he saw more. Shoulders too broad, arms too long, a posture that looked almost trained. The creature shifted weight from one leg to the other with controlled precision, as if deciding how close it wanted to get. Carter steadied the M60. The next bolt of lightning hit closer, and the face came into view. Human, but not. The jaw extended too far, the brow too heavy, skin pulled unnaturally tight, as if the features had been shaped rather than grown. And the eyes, two bioluminescent green orbs, glowed through the rain, unaffected by light or distance. Then it moved, not rushing, not charging. A slow, confident step. Then another. And then, with no warning, it crossed 30 meters in 2.3 seconds, covering ground in a way no soldier, no animal, no known primate could match. Carter didn't think. He fired. The M60 thundered, tracers slicing red arcs through the rain. 47 rounds in a tight, controlled burst. He counted them automatically, muscle memory guiding each pull of the trigger. 17 rounds struck home. He saw the impacts, dark, almost black blood spraying in thick droplets. The creature absorbed the hits like its body was reinforced. It staggered, but not from pain, more like recalculating. And then it made a sound. Not a roar, not a scream. A vocalization, structured, tonal, almost like language pushed through a throat built for another purpose. The creature stared at him, and Carter felt something cold settle in his gut. He wasn't afraid, he wasn't confused. It knew him. Because in those glowing eyes, Carter thought he saw recognition. The moment Carter radioed the contact, Sergeant Daniels moved in with the rest of the squad. No shouting, no panic. Just that practiced urgency every infantryman learns after enough firefights. They swept in with red lens flashlights, rifles up, spacing tight, eyes trying to cut through the rain. And then they saw the blood. Thick, dark, still warm. Wilson, the medic, crouched beside it to impress the back of his hand close without touching. His eyebrows tightened. Feels hot, too hot. He checked it with a field thermometer, standard issue, nothing fancy. The reading came back steady, 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Human blood cooled fast in rain like this. Animal blood cooled even faster. But this held its heat, like the source had only just moved. Daniels didn't react. He simply said, "Document it," and pushed the squad forward. A few meters out, they found the footprints. At first glance, they looked like oversized human tracks. Broad, deep, spaced in long strides. But the details were wrong. The width was too large for any known primate in the region. The dermal ridges, visible under flashlight, ran in patterns no boot tread matched. And the weight displacement was uneven. Almost like something walked upright, but not with a human center of gravity. Carter felt a chill cut through the humidity. Wilson whispered, "Matches what the montagnards call batut." Local forest dweller lore. Stories the unit had joked about 100 times. But the strangest part wasn't the size or shape. It was the rain. It hammered everything. The leaves, the mud, the helmets, the rifles. Yet the prints remained crisp, not untouched, but not erased the way fresh mud normally collapsed under rainfall. As if something about the weight had compressed the soil deeper than normal. Daniels knelt, studying the ground. "Report what you saw," he said quietly. "Not what you think you saw." They followed the trail until it opened into a clearing the squad didn't recognize. It wasn't on their patrol map, not on the older French maps either. The edges were charred, the soil slightly lighter. Signs of an old napalm strike, maybe a year or two old, or a forgotten French outpost dug out decades before. Logical explanations. But the silence in that clearing felt wrong, like something had waited there, recently. The clearing unsettled everyone, but they didn't have time to analyze it. The rain thickened again, the air grew heavier, and Daniels ordered the squad back to camp. They moved fast, weapons ready, senses stretched thin. Carter kept scanning the tree line, replaying the creature's eyes in his head. He tried to shove the thought aside, but something deep in his gut told him the night wasn't finished. Back at the perimeter, the squad re-established positions. Trip flares were reset. Claymores were checked. The generator kicked out a low, steady hum that carried just enough power to run the radios and emergency lamps. Carter took his place behind the M60 again, the fresh belt linked and ready. For 20 minutes, nothing moved. Then the jungle changed. Not silence this time. Movement. Multiple, heavy, coordinated. Private Jenkins whispered over the net, "I've got shapes at my 12. Higher ground, can't confirm." Before Daniels could respond, a massive stone crashed into the perimeter, smashing through a stack of ammunition crates with the force of a vehicle collision. Another stone followed, bigger, heavier, slamming into the sandbags near Rodriguez's position. The impact shook the entire defensive line. Carter recognized the pattern immediately. High ground bombardment, coordinated angles, rock ape tactics. But the weight was wrong. These weren't fist-sized projectiles like previous encounters. These were massive, 300, maybe 400 pounds, launched with terrifying accuracy. Daniel shouted, "Positions! Fire on command!" Another barrage hit. Flares should have ignited, but the humidity had climbed so fast the phosphorus failed. 2 popped weakly and died. Another looked like it had been tampered with. Wiring bent, pin half snapped. Either sabotage or something in the tree line had pulled at them. The generator sputtered next. A sharp metallic impact, sparks. The lights flickered and died. The camp fell into near darkness, except for Red Lane's flashlights and the occasional lightning flash ripping across the sky. "Contact front!" Rodriguez yelled. Shapes surged down the slope, 8, maybe more. Tall silhouettes, broad-shouldered, moving upright with speed that didn't match their size. They weren't silent this time. They growled, barked, and hurled stones with a rhythm that sounded almost rehearsed. Daniels finally gave the command. "Open fire!" Carter squeezed the trigger. The M60 roared alive. Tracers cutted clean arcs through the rain. Rodriguez and Thompson joined in with their M16s, controlled bursts lighting the tree line. The creatures didn't scatter. They shifted positions, used elevation, and attacked from angles that forced the Marines to constantly adjust their fire. A stone struck near Wilson, shattering on impact and throwing fragments into his leg. Another hit Jenkins square in the chest, knocking the wind out of him and sending him rolling back behind cover. 2 more Marines took hits. Broken ribs, concussions, deep lacerations from shattered debris. The firefight lasted minutes, but felt endless. And through all of it, one thing became clear. These creatures weren't animals reacting out of panic. Their movements were deliberate, coordinated, calculated. Whatever they weren't afraid of gunfire. They understood it. The Marines weren't the only ones dealing with whatever was in those mountains. As the squad regrouped after the attack, Daniels briefed them on something intelligence had whispered about for months. Something that suddenly felt a lot less like rumor. The Viet Cong had been reporting the same encounters. Multiple NVA patrols in Con Tum and the A Shao Valley logged attacks that mirrored what Carter's squad had just survived. Large, upright creatures using high ground, coordinated movement, and rock barrages strong enough to injure armed soldiers. These weren't campfire stories. These were formal contact reports stamped and filed. And in 1974, long after most American forces had gone home, North Vietnamese Command authorized a full expedition led by General Hoang Minh Thao. Soldiers, scientists, trackers, they spent weeks in the highlands collecting evidence. What they brought back was unsettlingly specific. Footprints measuring 28 by 16 centimeters. Deep impressions consistent with a biped far heavier than any known primate. Human-like toe structure, but wider and flatter. Hair samples suggesting a sagittal crest, similar to great apes, but with density patterns no species matched. Vietnamese biologists published internal notes describing an unknown hominid adapted for steep terrain. And the French had known long before that. Archived colonial reports from 1947 mentioned l'homme sauvage, the wild man of Indochina, described as tall, strong, and disturbingly human in its behavior. French officers dismissed it publicly, but their private notes told a different story. Different armies, different decades, same descriptions. Every army saw them, every army feared them, but none understood them. If every army saw the same thing, then the question becomes simple. What exactly were these creatures? Scientists who later reviewed the Vietnamese and American reports didn't jump to the supernatural. They went straight to evolution and the fossil record. Some pointed to Gigantopithecus blacki, a real giant ape that once roamed Southeast Asia. 10 feet tall, massively built, and believed to have vanished around 300,000 years ago. But fossils are scarce, and its extinction was never fully understood. If any environment could hide a surviving lineage, it would be Vietnam's Central Highlands. Others suggested Pongo Widenreichi, an ancient orangutan species far larger and more ground-dwelling than the modern kind. Its skeletal features matched several wartime descriptions, especially the heavy jaws and sagittal crest seen in both American and Vietnamese reports. And then there's the jungle itself. Vietnam's triple canopy forests form isolated microecosystems where sunlight barely reaches the ground. Entire valleys can go unrecorded for decades. Even today, new species still emerge from these mountains. The saola, nicknamed the Asian unicorn, wasn't discovered until 1992. The popalangur, a new species of monkey, was identified as recently as 2020. So the logic became difficult to dismiss. If primates survived anywhere, it would be here. But the behavior was the hardest part to explain. These creatures weren't hunting humans. They were defending territory, reacting only when armed men entered certain ridgelines and valleys. Their attacks were coordinated, timed, and focused on military positions. Never civilians, never unarmed workers, never local elders. It wasn't predation, it wasn't panic, it was response. As if something out there understood troop movement, recognized weapons, and viewed the war as an encroachment on land it already claimed. A species intelligent enough to observe, adapt, and retaliate. Something ancient. Something not human, but close enough to make every soldier question what else walked beneath that jungle canopy. Night returned with the same heavy stillness, the same pressure in the air that always came before something went wrong in the highlands. Carter felt it first. A shift, a weight, the kind of silence that never meant safety in Vietnam. Then Daniels whispered the words every man dreaded hearing on perimeter watch. Movement, multiple, hold positions. Shapes emerged in the tree line, low, broad silhouettes moving in groups of 8 to 12. Rock apes, 5 to 6 feet tall, the same reddish-brown bodies soldiers had been describing for years. But tonight, something was different. They weren't alone. Behind them, barely visible in the mist, stood a taller outline, over 7 feet, unmoving, watching. Carter's stomach tightened. The rock apes moved like units, flanking, spreading, using the high ground. But the tall one, it didn't join them. It directed them, without sound, without motion, as if its presence alone dictated the flow of the attack. The first volley came hard, Stones the size of artillery shells crashed down from the ridgeline. 300+ pounds thrown with impossible force. The apes advanced with hit-and-run precision, using trees for concealment, breaking into the open only long enough to force the squad to reposition. Another group circled behind, creating a diversion with guttural howls that echoed across the valley. Radios crackled with distortion, not supernatural, just monsoon static and humidity choking the circuits. Daniels made the call. "Fall back to secondary line, now." The squad moved in controlled retreat, covering each sector with overlapping fire. Carter held the rear, M60 braced, watching the shadows pulse between trunk and vine. And then, everything stopped. The tall creature stepped into the open, slow, deliberate, completely unthreatened by the rifles pointed at it. Carter's finger tightened on the trigger, then froze. The creature mirrored him, head tilting as if studying his hesitation. Rain dripped, wind shifted. No one spoke. Then, with a slow, deliberate turn, the creature backed into the jungle, the rock apes withdrawing with it until the forest swallowed every trace of movement. Silence returned. Too quickly, too completely, and for the first time, Carter wondered if they were fighting animals or neighbors. By morning, the squad looked like men who had aged years overnight. Extraction came quietly, no questions asked. Just the usual clipboard signatures, and a medic who pretended not to see the fear still sitting behind their eyes. Back at base, the debrief room felt colder than the jungle itself. Daniels gave the official version, the one that fit inside a report. Carter gave the technical facts, the ones that couldn't be disproven. No one mentioned the tall figure that watched them leave. The analysts didn't press. Maybe they'd heard enough of these stories already. Maybe they knew pushing too hard only made veterans stop talking. So the files stayed vague. Unidentified primate activity, hostile wildlife, environmental interference. Nothing more. And when the men went home, the stories traveled with them, not spoken loudly, only whispered at reunions, VFW halls, late nights when memories drifted back with the smell of wet earth. Meanwhile, the Montagnard elders kept telling the same Batutung stories they had told long before any foreign uniform entered their valleys. Same descriptions, same behavior, same warnings, because the jungle keeps its secrets. And in Vietnam, the jungle was always part of the war. Vietnam wasn't just a war between nations. It was a war fought inside a living world. A world that had its own ancient guardians. Years later, Carter would remember the terrain more vividly than the firefights. The mist rolling off Hill 621, the broken ridge lines above Dong Den, the deep, echoing valleys of Con Tum where even the bravest soldiers lowered their voices. He would remember how alive the forest felt, how it watched, how it waited. Some veterans still argue about what they saw. Some call them animals. Some call them relics of an older world. But a few refuse to use the word monster, because monsters don't fight with tactics. Monsters don't warn before they strike. Monsters don't choose to walk away. The soldiers went home. The war ended. But deep in the Central Highlands, something still listens. Thanks for watching. If you want more true military mysteries, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. This is Wartime Phantoms, over and out.